Hello everyone! Following the last video about character analysis, in this video we'll transform each character's features to basic shapes in order to start breaking down each character. I'm going to use a brush with the opacity option on, which is beside here where it says opacity. This button here will make the stroke to have certain opacity, so it's easier for me to use this option in order to make strokes that are not the definitive ones, just to make the sketch. It's not the final sketch that we'll see in the next video, but with these we can make the basic shapes. To start, we see that the base shape of all of Stanley's head is an oval shape, right? But we'll go from simpler shapes, and combining many of them will form the actual silhouette it has. First, we'll break down the top as a circle. So let's say that the part from the eyes up is like a sphere, kind of like this. And by the silhouette it has, in the part of the cheek, we'll make a second sphere, but a bit wider. Let's say they intersect and something like this comes out. There's one sphere and the second sphere. Now the third sphere would be the nose, that is following our sphere's intersection approximately below the first sphere. So let's mark over here that there's a third sphere. And it's not only a sphere because we're using basic shapes. Stanley's nose shape is like a little bowl, if you notice. So if you realize, the shape we're using reminds of Stanley's shape, which is full of curves and bumps. So the character is always going to have this sphere shape generally. Now, approximately when his nose ends, or a bit higher, his eyes would be placed. So about the edge of the first sphere, maybe a bit higher, we start making a couple of circles, more or less. Now, I want to pay close attention to this distance here. Remember that what we're doing in this course is to bring a real-life person's features to cartoon. So I'm doing everything with basic shapes because if we're thinking in cartoons, the lesser, the better. Don't go for details, don't go for specific wrinkles or things that are almost invisible, because it wouldn't go with the cartoon concept or with the graphic line we're using for cartoon, which is simple, okay? So we have these little balls at this level, and now the lips. The lips are exactly in the middle of the second sphere, more or less. So if we cut through the middle approximately, the lips would be around here, right? But now there's something else. Here we see everything a bit shapeless, so we're going to start exaggerating features. We'll place the lips lower because he has the top lip protruding and low. See? The chin is very small and almost the same size that the top lip is. So let's draw the mouth a bit lower in order to exaggerate the character. Set it around here. This will be our guideline. We have the two cheekbones. And now, at the same level as the eyes, let's draw a couple of ovals. Now, this view I'm making, this perspective I have here is around 3/4 of the character. What does 3/4 mean? It means it's neither a side view or a front view. It's exactly in the middle, 3/4. More or less, that would be the shape of the face, if you realize. Contouring it. That is the volume the head has now. So we place the lip source here. See how, as we said, the chin, this little bump here he has for a chin, joins the other bump in the neck. So let's say he has another sphere protruding from there that joins with the back. This is the neck, a thick neck. And now, limiting more or less the hair, I want to exaggerate the general shape of all these. Let's select, using the selection tool, using key M, all this top part, which is the forehead. And I'll stretch it up a bit so it's a bit taller. Kind of like there. And the hair that has this shape as these receding hairlines here. So I'll leave this open part and I'll go down with the line. So with basic shapes, we already have more or less Stanley's sketch. This little sketch will be more detailed with the final sketch we'll make in the next video. So now we'll go with Emma's character. Let's see. I'll create a new layer. And as I said, Emma starts with a little circle. Let's do, like with Stanley, a little circle on top of her skull. And then we'll go down a little. Anyway, I want to simplify and I don't want to leave this bump, and I'll make it all plain so it'll be like a unique shape. We start then with a circle, and from the circle we'll go down a bit. Now, there's this unique feature in her chin, which is the fact that it's quite low and the tip of the chin is almost at the same height. So it's just a slight curve at the bottom. So it would look more or less like this. As we see, it's a bit like, from the shape's point of view, almost a square. It's a bit more rectangular. But anyway, I mean, it's kind of like a box. Unlike Stanley, which head's shape was a giant sphere, this is more like a little box, with a slight curve for the chin, like this, more or less. And since we're talking about shapes, let's take this opportunity to analyze these other heads I chose, in order to show you other common shapes we can find in human heads. For example, let's start with the first head. And one of the shapes that you can find is oval shape. Okay? Like Meryl Streep's head, which is the first one. Now, an alternative for this one would be an inverted water drop shaped head. Unlike the oval, the bottom part ends being slimmer and narrower and creates this water drop shape. Then we have a more particular head, but that you can find it, which is a sphere, like Elijah Wood's face. If you notice, it has everything condensed and his head shape is almost circular. Then we have another one, Conan O'Brien's head, which is almost like Jennifer's, like a water drop, but with more pronounced chin. So he ends up having something similar to Emma Stone. If you notice, unlike Emma, who has a more squared head, he's the intermediate step between the water drop and the oval. Then we have a face with more angles, like Uma Thurman's, which we could call diamond. If you notice by its shape, it has many angles defined in her face. So we could call it diamond. And last, we have a more rectangular. This is actually almost like a box. And even more, the neck is almost as wide as his chin. In this actor, the super rigid shape of his face stands out. So this is a resource you can use to quickly distinguish the base of all its canvas. Before we start to create details, with the basic shape of the head, we could start much faster to achieve the likeness of this actor we're portraying. Now let's go back to Emma's character. We'll see that just above the chin, there would be the lips. So, around here more or less, the lips would be situated. Her small nose, a bit over the lips, around here. Let's put a small ball for now as a reference. Then we go to details of how the actual shape of the nose would be depending on the actress. The eyes a bit separated, and now we start exaggerating. For me, the key detail of this character is the eyes. So let's exaggerate the size of the eyes. They're already big, so let's make them much bigger. And remember, that exaggerating is what will make it more similar to a cartoon-style illustration. So I'm correcting a bit the width because I want to give it a bit more space to the eyes. So I'm stretching a bit more these in order to have space. So let's start with the eyes shape, which I'll make this big. In the next video, as I'm saying, I'll enter into detail. And on top of all these, let's make them a bit more like wasp eyes. What I did here, it's just not leaving them as spheres. I'm doing this with the transform option. We shrink this a bit and we make it thinner on that side, so it's like a novel. But if you notice, the eyelids go from a lower point to a higher point. We always tend to do these with female characters, unlike with the male. Now, on top of this, the eyebrows, which also make the gaze change a lot, are a bit like super thin and almost at the end they go down. Around there. I'm missing some forehead now, so I'm going to lower a bit the eyebrows and I'm going to give the drawing a bit more forehead. So let's grow a bit more skull here, a bit higher. Believe me, it looks a bit weird now, but when we're done with the sketch and it's much more detailed, these will get better. And well, now we have the base, more or less. We don't see the ears probably, maybe this one, because I'm going to follow some kind of fusion between this hairstyle and this other one, which was when she had long and wavy hair. So then at this point, curve, a small curve here. And now we have more or less a character. Now the neck, which is thin, unlike Stanley's, which was almost glued to the head. In this case, it will look like this. And well, this would be all for this video in which we've seen the basic features. What we'll do next is to create a more detailed sketch in order to finish bringing the person to a cartoon style. So, see ya!